Welcome back to our channel. In this video, we reveal some of the most valuable coins in the world, coins that collectors and investors are willing to pay thousands or even millions for. Imagine this for a moment. Somewhere in America right now, a single penny is sitting quietly in a drawer, a jar, or an old cigar box. It looks ordinary, feels ordinary, and yet that one small copper coin could be worth up to $999,000. Almost $1 million for a penny. Before you brush this off, ask yourself an uncomfortable question. What if you already own it and don't even know it? That thought alone should stop you cold, because today we're uncovering the remarkable story of the 1971 Lincoln 1-cent coin. A coin that has stunned collectors, ignited bidding wars, and quietly changed lives. This is not a fantasy, and this is not a get-rich-quick story. This is about knowledge, timing, and recognizing opportunity before it slips through your fingers. In the world of rare coins, the difference between financial regret and financial freedom often comes down to one small detail. One mint mark. One error the average person overlooks. And if you're watching this, you're already ahead of most people. Let's rewind to 1971. America was changing. Inflation was rising, the gold standard was fading, and the U.S. Mint was producing millions of pennies every single day. At the San Francisco Mint, marked by a small but powerful S beneath Lincoln's date, proof coins were being struck with extreme care. These were never meant for everyday use. They were created for collectors, meant to be flawless, polished, and perfect. But here's the twist: perfection doesn't always happen, even in the most controlled environments. And when perfection fails at the Mint, history is made. Some 1971 Lincoln pennies escaped with rare and dramatic mint errors, the kind that instantly separate a common cent from a life-changing asset. We're talking about errors that should never exist: off-metal strikes, double dies, misaligned designs, and proof errors so striking they stop seasoned collectors mid-sentence. These coins weren't supposed to leave the building, yet they did. And when they surface today, the market pays attention. Big attention. Now here's where fear quietly enters the picture, and it's a healthy fear. Because while collectors are actively hunting these coins, many Americans unknowingly spend, misplace, or ignore them every year. Think about that. A coin capable of commanding nearly $1 million can disappear forever with one careless moment. Dropped into a donation jar, lost in a move, cashed in at face value. That's not just unfortunate, that's avoidable. But let's flip the emotion, because this is where excitement takes over. The 1971 penny is in high demand, not because of hype, but because of scarcity and condition. High-grade examples with confirmed mint errors are aggressively pursued by elite collectors and investors who understand that tangible assets like rare coins are powerful stores of wealth. Unlike stocks, they can't be printed. Unlike digital assets, they don't vanish overnight. When one of these coins appears at auction, serious money shows up fast. Here's a quick pattern interrupt for you. Be honest. When was the last time a penny made your heart race? Probably never. And yet, that's exactly what happens when the right 1971 error coin hits the market. It's almost ironic. The smallest denomination in American currency quietly becomes one of the most powerful. What makes this coin even more compelling is its story. It represents a moment in U.S. history, a flaw in a system designed for precision, and a rare intersection of accident and opportunity. Collectors don't just buy these coins, they compete for them. And competition drives value. That's how market prices reach levels like $999,000, especially when the coin is authenticated, graded, and presented correctly. This brings us to the turning point, the moment where knowledge becomes action. Because owning the coin is only half the equation. Knowing what to do with it is where real wealth is unlocked. Many people make the mistake of rushing, selling too quickly, or trusting the wrong source. The most successful sellers understand patience, presentation, and timing. They know that rare coins don't beg for buyers, buyers wait for them. And here's something most people don't realize. Demand for rare U.S. coins is not slowing down. It's accelerating. As more Americans look for alternative investments and legacy assets, the spotlight continues to shift toward rare pennies, especially iconic years like 1971 with the San Francisco Mint mark. The supply is fixed. No more will ever be made. That alone creates urgency. Ask yourself another powerful question. If the right collector is willing to pay nearly $1 million for this coin, why would you settle for less by not understanding its true value? That question alone separates casual owners from strategic sellers. Let's inject a little humor to reset the room. People used to say, "A penny saved is a penny earned." Turns out, in this case, a penny saved could be a house, a retirement, or a legacy for your family. Not bad for something smaller than your thumbnail. As we move toward the final act, here's the big idea to lock in. Wealth doesn't always announce itself loudly. Sometimes it whispers from a jar on a shelf. The people who win are the ones who listen. If you own old pennies, especially proof coins from the early 1970s, the smartest move is awareness. Awareness creates opportunity. Opportunity creates leverage. And leverage creates freedom. The 1971 Lincoln penny with a rare mint error is not just a collector's item. It's a symbol of how overlooked assets can transform lives. Right now, collectors are searching. Auctions are active. And the window of opportunity is open. The only question that matters is whether you recognize what you might already have. Imagine this for a moment. Somewhere in America, right now, a small copper coin is sitting quietly in a drawer, a jar, or the bottom of a dusty box. It looks ordinary, feels ordinary, and yet, if its owner knew what they were holding, their entire financial story could change overnight. What if I told you that a single 1973 Lincoln penny, no mint mark, the kind most people ignore, has captured attention with a market value whispered as high as $888,000? Not a stock. Not real estate, a penny. Yes, the same 1-cent coin you've passed over 1,000 times. And before you laugh and say, "That could never be me," ask yourself this uncomfortable question. How many pennies have you already given away without ever looking? This is where our story begins. Not with wealth, but with blindness. For decades, Americans have unknowingly spent, tossed, or donated coins that collectors would later fight over. The 1973 no-mint mark Lincoln cent sits at the center of this quiet revolution. Born in an era of economic uncertainty, inflation, and massive coin production, this penny was never meant to be rare. And yet, certain error examples slipped through the system, unnoticed by the U.S. Mint, untouched by quality control, and released straight into circulation. That's the irony that makes seasoned collectors smile and newcomers lean forward. The most valuable opportunities are often created by mistakes. Now let's pause for a second, pattern interrupt, because this is usually the moment someone says, "Come on, if these coins were really that valuable, everyone would know about them." That's the funny part. Everyone thinks everyone else knows. Meanwhile, the people who actually check their coins quietly change their lives. History doesn't reward noise. It rewards attention. And the 1973 Lincoln penny is a perfect example of how attention turns pocket change into legacy wealth. As we move deeper into this story, fear begins to creep in, and it should. Fear of missing out. Fear of realizing too late that the coin you spent on coffee 10 years ago could have paid for your retirement. Certain 1973 no-mint mark pennies exhibit striking mint errors. Subtle but powerful anomalies in strike, alignment, and composition that separate a common cent from a collector's trophy. These are the coins that create bidding wars. These are the coins that auction houses highlight, not because they're flashy, but because they are scarce, authenticated, and fiercely demanded by serious buyers who already understand what most people don't. This brings us to the turning point of our story. Demand. High demand doesn't announce itself with fireworks. It shows up quietly in auction rooms, private sales, and sealed transactions between collectors who play the long game. Wealthy collectors don't chase trends, they chase rarity. And rare error coins from trusted eras like the early 1970s sit in a very special category. They are tangible, they are finite, and once they move into strong hands, they rarely return to the open market. That's why values climb. That's why urgency matters. And that's why the window to act is always smaller than it appears. Here's a question that resets everything. If opportunity knocked wearing a disguise, would you recognize it? Most people expect wealth to look loud, but real wealth often whispers. The 1973 Lincoln cent doesn't scream value. It invites inspection. And for those willing to inspect, to authenticate, to verify, the rewards can be staggering. Stories circulate of ordinary Americans, teachers, mechanics, retirees who simply took the time to look closer. They didn't mint the coin. They didn't predict the market. They just paid attention when others didn't. Now we enter the final act, and this is where excitement replaces hesitation. Because knowledge, once gained, creates momentum. You are no longer guessing. You are no longer hoping. You are evaluating. If you own old pennies, especially from the early 1970s, you are holding potential leverage. Not every coin will be rare, but it only takes one. And the market doesn't need thousands of sellers. It needs a few verified coins to fuel intense competition. That's why top-grade examples, especially error coins from 1973 with no mint mark, command extraordinary interest and headline-making prices. Let's be honest for a moment. Another pattern interrupt. You can scroll past this video and forget everything you heard. Most people will. Or you can do what wealth builders always do when they sense asymmetry. They pause. They recheck. They ask better questions. They look again. Because the cost of looking is nothing, but the cost of ignoring can be enormous. Time is not neutral in collectibles. As years pass, fewer coins survive, fewer remain in pristine condition, and fewer are available for new buyers entering the market with deep pockets. This is not about luck. This is about positioning. The people who win in niche markets like rare coins are the ones who move before certainty becomes common knowledge. Once everyone agrees, the opportunity has already matured. The 1973 no-mint mark Lincoln penny sits at that powerful intersection between history, scarcity, and rising awareness. And for those who understand its significance, it represents more than money. It represents control. Control over timing. Control over value. Control over your financial narrative. So here we are at the end of the story, and the question isn't whether rare pennies exist. The market has already answered that. The real question is personal. What's sitting in your home right now? What have you inherited, stored away, or overlooked? Because sometimes, the difference between an ordinary life and an extraordinary one isn't effort. It's attention. And in a world obsessed with the next big thing, the quiet power of a single 1973 Lincoln penny may be one of the most underestimated wealth stories of our time. Imagine this. A single penny, quiet, ordinary, ignored for decades, sitting in a coffee jar, a dresser drawer, or the bottom of a toolbox in an American home. Now imagine that same penny commanding attention in private collector circles, whispered about in auction rooms, and linked to price discussions as high as $865,000. Sounds unbelievable, right? That disbelief is exactly why most people miss their moment. And today, that moment may be sitting in your pocket. This is the story of the 1975 Lincoln 1-cent penny with no mint mark, a coin that looks harmless at first glance, yet has become one of the most talked about error pennies among serious U.S. collectors. And before you laugh and say, "Come on, it's just a penny," ask yourself this. How many life-changing opportunities have people ignored simply because they look too small to matter? Let's be honest for a second. Most Americans walk past wealth every single day without realizing it. Not in stock markets, not in crypto charts, but in old drawers, inherited boxes, and forgotten collections. The 1975 no-mint mark Lincoln penny was produced during a time of massive demand, rushed minting, and subtle but critical errors. And history shows us something powerful. When errors slip through its scale, rarity is born quietly and explodes later. Now here's where things get interesting, and this is where I want you to lean in. The Philadelphia Mint, which traditionally uses no mint mark, produced millions of pennies in 1975. But a very small number of these coins escaped with extraordinary errors and conditions that today place them in a completely different category. We're not talking about worn pocket change. We're talking about coins with unique characteristics that elite collectors compete aggressively to acquire. And when competition meets scarcity, prices don't rise politely, they leap. Picture this scenario. Two collectors, both financially powerful, both missing the same key piece in their Lincoln cent collection. Only one example surfaces. What happens next isn't negotiation, it's escalation. This is how reported market highs, sometimes discussed near $865,000, even enter the conversation. Not because every 1975 penny is worth that, but because the right one in the right condition with the right error becomes irresistible. Here's a quick pattern interrupt for you. If I offered you a dusty old painting and said, "This might be a masterpiece," would you laugh? Or would you flip it over to check the signature? Exactly. The smart move isn't dismissal. It's inspection. And that's where opportunity favors the prepared. Act 2 begins with a shift from curiosity to urgency. Because here's the uncomfortable truth. Every year, thousands of valuable coins are lost forever. Spent at gas stations, dropped into tip jars, tossed into Coinstar machines. Not because they weren't valuable, but because no one bothered to look closely. And the 1975 no-mint mark penny sits right in that danger zone of being overlooked. Collectors today are aging. Major collections are being locked away. Demand is tightening. And as fewer pristine or error examples remain available, the market doesn't wait for latecomers. This is why serious buyers are watching these pennies closely right now. Not tomorrow. Not next year. Now. Because once a coin is certified, verified, and absorbed into a long-term collection, it may not resurface for decades. Let me ask you something slightly uncomfortable. If a six-figure coin passed through your hands without you knowing, would you ever forgive yourself? Most people wouldn't. And that fear, the fear of missing out on what could have been, is not imaginary. It's happening quietly across the country. But here's the empowering part. You don't need luck. You need awareness. You need patience. And you need the confidence to treat small things seriously. Wealthy collectors didn't become wealthy by ignoring details. They became wealthy by obsessing over them. And yes, let's reset the energy for a second because I can already hear someone saying, "Sure, but this won't happen to me." Funny thing is, that sentence has been spoken by almost everyone who ever missed a breakthrough. Opportunity loves skepticism, because skepticism keeps competition low. Act 3 is where everything connects and where action becomes inevitable. The 1975 no-mint mark Lincoln penny represents more than a coin. It represents a mindset shift. The shift from spending to evaluating, from ignoring to investigating, from hoping for wealth to recognizing it. This market is not driven by hype alone. It's driven by history, condition, demand, and timing. And timing right now is critical. As economic uncertainty grows, tangible assets like rare U.S. coins become safe havens for serious money. That's not speculation. That's historical behavior repeating itself. So here's the powerful takeaway. If you own old pennies, inherited coins, or rolls that haven't been touched in years, you are not holding clutter. You are holding unanswered questions. And some questions, when answered correctly, come with commas. This is not about gambling. This is about due diligence. This is about understanding that extraordinary value often hides inside ordinary objects. The 1975 Lincoln penny doesn't shout. It whispers, and only those who listen closely ever hear it. The clock is quietly ticking. Demand is quietly rising. And opportunities like this don't announce themselves with fireworks. They sit still, waiting for the right eyes to notice them. So the real question isn't whether a penny can be worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. History has already answered that. The real question is, will you be the person who checked or the person who didn't? Because sometimes wealth isn't earned by chasing something new. Sometimes it's earned by finally paying attention to what's been right in front of you all along. Imagine this for a moment. Somewhere in America right now, a single penny is quietly sitting in a drawer, a jar, or an old coffee can. It looks ordinary, feels ordinary, and yet it carries a documented market value approaching $798,000. Not a stock tip, not crypto hype, a 1-cent Lincoln penny. And here's the unsettling part. The people who owned it didn't know what they had until it was almost too late. So let me ask you a question that might make you uncomfortable in the best possible way. What if that penny is already in your home, and you've been walking past a small fortune every single day? Welcome to a story most Americans were never taught to look for. A story hidden in plain sight. Today, we're uncovering the 1988 United States Lincoln 1-cent penny with no mint mark. A coin that has stunned collectors, shaken auction houses, and quietly rewritten what spare change really means. This is not fantasy. This is not theory. This is how wealth sometimes disguises itself as something insignificant, waiting for the right eyes to notice. Act 1 begins with a time most people remember clearly. The late 1980s. Gas was cheap, life felt simpler, and pennies were everywhere. In 1988, the U.S. Mint produced millions of Lincoln cents intended for everyday circulation. Nothing special, nothing flashy, or so it seemed, because during that production run, a small number of pennies were struck with rare and highly desirable errors, and those errors were released directly into circulation. No announcement, no warning, just quiet mistakes that would later become legendary. Now here's where fear creeps in because most people never check their pennies. They spend them, they dump them into jars, they ignore them, and collectors know something the general public doesn't. The biggest money isn't always in gold or silver. Sometimes it's in errors, in anomalies, in coins that were never supposed to exist in that form. The 1988 no-mint Mark Lincoln penny is one of those coins, and demand for verified error examples has exploded as serious buyers compete for fewer and fewer authenticated pieces. Let me pause you right here with a quick pattern interrupt. Be honest, when was the last time you actually looked at a penny before spending it? Yesterday? 10 years ago? Or never? Don't worry, you're not alone. Most people treat pennies like background noise, and that's exactly why opportunities like this don't last forever. Act 2 is where excitement takes over. As collectors and investors began closely examining 1988 Lincoln cents, certain error characteristics stood out. Subtle details that separate an ordinary penny from one that can command life-changing money. Coins with specific striking anomalies, preservation quality, and authentication pedigree began surfacing in elite collector circles. When these coins entered the open market, the response was immediate and intense. Competitive bidding, private offers, long waiting lists, the kind of demand you only see when supply is razor-thin and confidence is absolute. And here's what makes this even more powerful. This isn't driven by hype. It's driven by scarcity and desire. High-net-worth collectors aren't emotional buyers. They're strategic. They acquire assets with history, tangibility, and long-term upside. The 1988 no-mint Mark Lincoln penny error fits perfectly into that category. It's American, it's iconic, and it tells a story of accidental rarity that can never be repeated. Now let's inject a little humor before we go further. Isn't it ironic? People chase risky investments, stare at charts all day, and stress over market swings, while a penny that once bought a piece of candy now commands the price of a luxury home. Abraham Lincoln would probably raise an eyebrow at that. As more coins are discovered and immediately absorbed into private collections, availability tightens. This creates urgency, the kind that separates people who act from people who say, "I'll check later," because later in this market often means never. Once a high-grade example is certified and sold, it rarely comes back. It disappears into vaults, estates, and legacy collections. Act 3 is where everything connects and where your role becomes clear. This is not just a story about a coin. It's a story about awareness, about understanding that wealth doesn't always announce itself loudly. Sometimes it whispers. Sometimes it hides in the smallest denomination imaginable. And sometimes it rewards the people willing to slow down, look closer, and act decisively. If you are someone who believes in preserving value, in recognizing opportunity before the crowd, and in turning overlooked objects into meaningful assets, then this moment matters. Because the window for discovering, verifying, and selling rare Lincoln penny errors is narrowing as knowledge spreads and competition intensifies. The market doesn't wait. Collectors don't hesitate. An opportunity doesn't knock twice. So here's the final question I want you to sit with. If a single penny could legitimately change your financial trajectory, would you take 5 minutes to check what you already own? Because history shows us something powerful. Fortunes aren't always found. Sometimes they're simply noticed. Stay curious, stay alert, and remember, the smallest things often carry the greatest value, especially when the rest of the world isn't paying attention. Imagine this for a moment. Somewhere in America right now, a simple brown penny is sitting quietly in a drawer, a jar, or a forgotten coffee can. It looks ordinary, feels ordinary, and yet, if the owner only knew what they were holding, their financial life could change forever. Because today we're talking about a 1991 D Mint Mark Lincoln 1-cent coin, an overlooked piece of pocket change that, in rare error form, has stunned collectors and reached market values as high as $777,000. Yes, a penny. Before you laugh or scroll away, ask yourself this uncomfortable question. What if you already owned one and didn't even know it? This is where most people make a costly mistake. They assume wealth looks flashy. They think life-changing money arrives with trumpets and headlines. But real hidden wealth? It disguises itself as the ordinary. And the 1991 D Lincoln penny is the perfect example of how opportunity often whispers instead of shouts. Millions were minted in Denver, passed hand to hand, spent on coffee, tossed into jars. Yet a microscopic error, nearly invisible to the untrained eye, transformed a few of these coins into elite assets fiercely pursued by high-end collectors and serious investors. Now, let's pause for a second. Be honest. When was the last time you actually looked at your pennies? Not just glanced, but really looked. Most people treat pennies like clutter. They weigh down pockets, collect dust, and get ignored. And that's exactly why this story matters. Because while most people are dismissing small change, the informed few are quietly building wealth from it. Funny how the smallest coin often teaches the biggest lesson, isn't it? Act 1 begins in 1991, at the Denver Mint, where millions of Lincoln cents were struck under immense pressure and speed. In that environment, perfection isn't guaranteed. A subtle die misalignment, a striking anomaly, or an unusual planchet error slipped through quality control. These mistakes weren't corrected. They weren't recalled. They entered circulation. And decades later, those same errors became the reason collectors are willing to pay more for a single penny than most people earn in years. Here's where excitement kicks in. The rare 1991 D-era penny is not just valuable, it's scarce, desirable, and in high demand. Serious collectors aren't guessing. They know exactly what they're hunting for. When one of these coins appears at auction in high grade with verified error characteristics, competition becomes fierce. Prices climb fast. Hesitation disappears. Because in this market, rarity plus condition equals power. And power attracts money. But let's talk about fear for a moment because it's real and it's justified. Every year, priceless coins are lost forever. They're spent at face value. They're dumped at Coinstar machines. They're inherited and sold in bulk without inspection. Imagine unknowingly trading a six-figure penny for 1 cent. That's not a hypothetical. It happens. And it happens because people don't take the time to look, learn, and act. The fear isn't that these coins don't exist. The fear is that you might already have had one and let it go. Act 2 is where awareness becomes urgency. Because the market isn't slowing down. Demand for rare U.S. error coins has surged as collectors seek tangible assets with historical significance and proven appreciation. Unlike trends that fade, elite coins endure. Wealthy buyers want what others cannot easily obtain. And the 1991 D-era penny fits that profile perfectly. It's American. It's authentic. It's finite. No more are being made. Every year, fewer remain in collectible condition. Here's a quick reality check. And a little humor to reset your attention. People will spend hours comparing gas prices to save $3, but won't spend 3 minutes checking a penny that could be worth $700,000. Let that sink in. Strange priorities, right? As more people learn about these coins, the window narrows. Early awareness creates advantage. Late awareness creates regret. This is the moment where curiosity turns into action. Because the difference between those who benefit from hidden opportunities and those who miss them is simple. The winners pay attention. Act 3 is where transformation happens. This is no longer just about a coin. It's about mindset. The mindset of someone who understands that wealth doesn't always announce itself loudly. Sometimes it waits quietly for the right person to recognize it. The 1991 D Lincoln penny represents more than copper and zinc. It represents possibility. It represents the idea that your financial breakthrough might already be in your possession. Picture this. You're sorting through old jars, inherited collections, forgotten rolls. Your hands move slowly now, Your eyes are sharper. You're no longer dismissing anything, because you understand something most people don't. Small details create massive outcomes. And if you do discover one of these rare error pennies, properly authenticated and preserved, you're not just holding a coin. You're holding leverage. You're holding choice. You're holding a story that very few people get to tell. And here's the final truth, the one that ties everything together. Wealth favors the observant, the patient, the prepared. While others rush past opportunity, you stop. You look closer. You ask better questions. And that's how ordinary objects turn into extraordinary results. So before you move on with your day, before another penny gets ignored, remember this. History has already proven that the 1991 D. Lincoln penny error can command staggering value. The demand is real. The market is active. And the only unanswered question is this: will you be the person who discovers hidden wealth, or the one who unknowingly lets it slip away? Imagine this for a moment. Somewhere in America, a small copper coin is sitting quietly in a jar, a drawer, maybe even your pocket. It looks ordinary, feels ordinary, and yet, if you knew what experts know, your heart might skip a beat. Because this is not just any penny. This is the 1991 Lincoln 1-cent coin with no mint mark, and in today's red-hot collector market, a rare error example has reached a staggering value of up to $819,000. Yes, nearly $1 million for a single penny. Now here's the question that should stop you cold. What if you already own one and don't even know it? Act 1 begins with a truth most people never hear. The biggest fortunes aren't always found on Wall Street or in Silicon Valley. Sometimes they're hiding in plain sight. In 1991, millions of Lincoln pennies were struck, and most were spent without a second thought. But a small number left the U.S. Mint with extraordinary errors, mistakes so rare and so desirable that elite collectors now compete aggressively to own them. These aren't flaws. In the coin world, they're miracles. And the fear you should feel right now isn't about missing out in the future. It's about realizing you may have already missed something in the past by spending these coins without looking. Be honest. How many pennies have slipped through your fingers over the years? Here's where excitement kicks in. The 1991 no-mint mark Lincoln penny sits at the center of intense demand because it represents a perfect storm. Modern era, massive circulation, and rare minting anomalies that weren't caught in time. When a coin like this surfaces with the right error, the right strike characteristics, and the right condition, it becomes a trophy asset. High-end buyers don't hesitate. They move fast, they pay strong money, and they don't wait for prices to come down. And let's pause for a second. How many investments can you name that started as 1 cent and turned into a life-changing sum? Now, quick pattern interrupt. This is the part where most people laugh and say, it's just a penny. And that's exactly why opportunities like this exist. The market rewards those who look closer while everyone else keeps laughing. Lincoln pennies have quietly created more everyday millionaires than most people realize, and the 1991 no-mint mark error is one of the clearest examples of that hidden potential. This isn't fantasy. This is documented demand driven by scarcity, condition, and collector psychology. The same forces that drive luxury watches and fine art apply here, just on a much smaller, more accessible scale. As we move deeper into the story, Act 2 reveals why urgency matters now more than ever. The coin market has changed. Serious buyers are aging, estates are being settled, and premium examples are being locked away in long-term collections. That means fewer opportunities for new discoveries and more pressure on prices. When a high-grade 1991 no-mint mark error penny enters the market today, it doesn't sit around waiting for attention. Creates it. The excitement spreads quickly through dealer networks, auction houses, and private collectors who understand exactly what they're looking at. And once a benchmark sale hits a figure like $819,000, it resets expectations permanently. Here's a question that resets attention. If someone offered to trade you a single penny for a luxury home, would you at least check your change first? Because that's the mindset shift happening right now. People between the ages of 30 and 65 are realizing that old coins aren't just nostalgia, they're leverage. They're portable wealth. They're historical assets with finite supply. And unlike digital investments, you can actually hold this one in your hand. The fear isn't that the opportunity is risky. The fear is that it's real, and time is the one thing you don't control. Act 3 is where everything connects. The 1991 no-mint Mark Lincoln penny represents more than a high-value coin. It represents awareness. Once you see the pattern, you can't unsee it. Errors, varieties, condition, timing. All of these factors align to create moments where ordinary people step into extraordinary outcomes. And the most inspiring part? You don't need to be rich to start. You just need to be attentive. The demand is already here. The buyers are already waiting. The market has already spoken. Think about the lifestyle implications for a moment. Selling a single rare penny at the right time can eliminate debt, fund retirement, or open doors to a level of freedom most people only talk about. That's why serious collectors and smart sellers treat coins like this with respect and confidence. They don't rush blindly, but they also don't hesitate when the market signals strength. And right now, all signals point in one direction: upward demand, shrinking supply, and growing awareness. Let's end with one final thought. History doesn't announce itself loudly. It whispers. And the 1991 no-mint Mark Lincoln penny is one of those whispers that's getting louder every year. Somewhere out there, another example is waiting to be discovered, authenticated, and placed into the hands of someone who understands its true worth. The only question left is simple and powerful. Will that someone be you? Or will this penny remain just another missed opportunity that jingled once and disappeared forever? If you're serious about rare coins, about protecting value, and about stepping into a smarter, more intentional future, this is your moment to start paying attention. Because sometimes, wealth doesn't come with fireworks. Sometimes, it comes quietly, stamped in copper, dated 1991, and waiting for the right eyes to finally see it. Imagine this for a moment. Somewhere in America right now, a simple brown penny is sitting quietly in a jar, a drawer, or an old coffee can. It doesn't sparkle. It doesn't shout for attention. And yet, if discovered by the right eyes, that ordinary 1994 Lincoln penny, with no mint mark, could be worth up to $912,000. That's not a typo. That's nearly $1 million hiding in plain sight. And here's the uncomfortable question that should already be stirring in your mind. What if that penny already passed through your hands, and you never knew it? Welcome to a world most people never see. A world where knowledge creates wealth, where patience beats luck, and where small details separate the financially stuck from the financially free. Today's story isn't about fantasy. It's about a real US coin, real collectors, real auctions, and a real market that rewards those who act before the crowd wakes up. Act 1 begins in 1994, a year most people remember for everyday life, not hidden opportunity. Millions of Lincoln cents were produced that year, and that's exactly why almost everyone ignores them. No mint mark, common date, nothing special at first glance. That's how opportunity loves to dress itself. Boring, familiar, invisible. But during production, something went wrong. A rare and highly sought-after minting error slipped past quality control, creating a tiny number of 1994 no-mint mark Lincoln pennies that are now among the most aggressively chased coins in the American collector market. And here's where fear quietly enters the room. Because once collectors identify an error like this, once grading services confirm it, once auction houses validate demand, the supply doesn't increase. It disappears. Coins are locked into private vaults, long-term collections, and generational estates. Prices don't drift upward. They leap. And those who didn't check their change in time are left watching headlines instead of bank balances. Now, let's pause for a second. Be honest with yourself. When was the last time you actually looked at a penny? Not tossed it aside. Not laughed it off. Really looked at it. Funny how the smallest coin in your pocket can carry the biggest secret, right? That's the kind of irony the wealthy quietly smile about. Act 2 is where excitement takes over. Because the 1994 no-mint Mark Lincoln penny error isn't valuable by accident. It's valuable because collectors crave what most people overlook. The error characteristics, the strike anomalies, the condition sensitivity, all of it creates a perfect storm of desirability. High-grade examples have triggered bidding wars, driven by serious buyers who don't ask, "Is it expensive?" They ask, "Can I still get one?" And here's the part most people never hear. This market isn't driven by emotion, it's driven by strategy. Experienced collectors and investors understand that US-era coins aren't just collectibles. They're portable wealth. They're inflation-resistant. They're globally recognized. And unlike stocks or real estate, they can be held in your hand. When a coin like this hits the upper tier of demand, prices don't politely wait for permission to rise. They move fast and they move decisively. Picture this scenario. You discover a 1994 no-mint mark penny with the right error markers. You authenticate it. You grade it. Suddenly, you're no longer a spectator. You're a participant in a market where six-figure and seven-figure transactions are normal. That's not luck. That's leverage. That's knowing something others ignored. And yes, before you ask, people have missed this. People have spent these coins. People have laughed them off. And that's exactly why the remaining verified examples command such intense interest. Scarcity feeds urgency, and urgency fuels price. Act 3 is where everything connects, where knowledge becomes action. Because the real value of this story isn't just the coin itself. It's what it represents. It represents a shift in mindset. The understanding that wealth doesn't always arrive loudly. Sometimes it whispers from the bottom of a jar. Right now, demand for rare US-era pennies is higher than ever. New collectors are entering the market. Veteran buyers are consolidating assets. And auction platforms are seeing stronger closing prices year after year. The 1994 no-mint Mark Lincoln penny sits firmly in that high-demand category. Not because it's flashy, but because it's proven. And here's the urgency you can't afford to ignore. Markets reward early awareness. Once mainstream attention catches up, the window narrows. The people who quietly check their coins are the ones quietly changing their financial future. Everyone else is left asking, why didn't I look sooner? So here's the final thought to sit with you. Wealth isn't always about earning more. Sometimes it's about recognizing what you already have. Somewhere nearby, there may be a coin that turns curiosity into confidence, and confidence into opportunity. The question isn't whether these pennies exist. They do. The question is whether you'll be the person who recognizes value, or the one who unknowingly lets it slip away. Imagine this for a moment. You're holding a single penny in your hand. Not a gold bar, not a stock certificate, just a quiet, ordinary-looking 1998 Lincoln penny with no mint mark. The kind most people would toss into a jar, a drawer, or the bottom of a car cup holder. But what if I told you that this exact penny, yes, 1 cent, has shocked the collecting world with values reaching as high as $692,000? Before you dismiss that as impossible, ask yourself this question. How many pennies have passed through your hands in your lifetime without a second glance? That uncomfortable feeling you just felt, that's not imagination. That's opportunity knocking, and most people never open the door. This story begins in the late 1990s, a time when America was focused on technology booms, new beginnings, and a fast-moving economy. The U.S. Mint was producing millions of Lincoln cents, day after day, machine after machine, where perfection was expected but not always delivered. And in that massive river of coins, a rare and extraordinary mistake quietly slipped through. The 1998 Lincoln penny with no mint mark, carrying a highly desirable error, entered circulation unnoticed. No headlines, no alarms, just a coin waiting for the right eyes to recognize it. That's how real wealth stories often start, silently. Now here's where excitement replaces doubt. Certain 1998 no-mint Mark Lincoln pennies exhibit rare error characteristics that separate them from the billions of ordinary cents. These are not cosmetic flaws. These are dramatic minting anomalies, errors so scarce, so clean, and so visually striking that top collectors compete fiercely to own them. In elite condition, authenticated and graded at the highest levels, these pennies have reached reported market values up to $692,000. Not because they're old, not because they're shiny, but because they are rare in a way that cannot be recreated. Once they're gone forever. Let me pause you right here with a quick reality check. If a stranger offered you a penny and said it might be worth more than a luxury home, would you laugh? Or would you look closer? Most people laugh. Wealthy collectors look closer. That difference in reaction is everything. As demand for rare U.S. era coins continues to surge, especially among seasoned American collectors aged 30 to 65. Coins like the 1998 no-mint Mark Lincoln cent are no longer curiosities. They are assets. The market has evolved. High-net-worth collectors are moving away from volatile investments and into tangible, historic pieces with proven demand. A rare penny doesn't crash overnight. It doesn't depend on interest rates. And it doesn't ask for permission to increase in value. It simply becomes harder to find as more people wake up to its significance. This brings us to the emotional core of the story: fear. Not the kind that paralyzes, but the kind that sharpens focus. The fear of realizing years from now that the coin you spent or ignored could have changed your financial story. The fear of knowing that opportunities don't disappear loudly. They fade quietly when no one is paying attention. Every year, fewer of these rare 1998-era pennies remain unsearched, ungraded, and undiscovered. Time is not neutral here. Time is working against those who wait. And yet, there's excitement layered right on top of that fear. Because unlike many wealth opportunities, this one doesn't require insider connections or massive capital. It requires awareness. It requires curiosity. It requires the willingness to take a second look at what others overlook. Somewhere in America right now, a small collection, a forgotten roll of pennies, or a decades-old jar is holding a coin that could rewrite someone's future. The question is never, does this happen? The question is, who does it happen to? Let's shift into the final act, where urgency takes center stage. The rare coin market rewards those who move before the crowd. Once a coin type becomes mainstream news, the easy discoveries are already gone. Prices don't wait for consensus. They respond to scarcity and demand, and right now, demand for high-grade Lincoln cent errors is intense. Auction records, collector interest, and private sales all point in the same direction. Exceptional pieces are being absorbed into long-term collections, removed from the open market, and held as legacy assets. Here's a thought that might make you smile. Somewhere, someone once bought pizza with Bitcoin. Somewhere else, someone paid for coffee with a rare coin. History has a sense of humor like that. The only difference between regret and satisfaction is whether you paused long enough to ask, what if this is something special? The 1998 no-mint Mark Lincoln penny error represents more than money. It represents a mindset, a refusal to assume that small things are insignificant. A belief that wealth doesn't always announce itself, it often whispers. And for those who listen, who act, and who recognize value before the masses do, that whisper can turn into life-changing results. So before you empty that jar, before you roll those pennies, before you assume you've already seen everything worth seeing, take one more look. Because in the world of rare coins, the next great discovery is almost never found by the person who says, "It's just a penny." It's found by the person who knows better and acts while there's still time. And if this moment made you think twice, that's not an accident. That's the sound of opportunity doing what it does best. Showing up quietly, waiting for someone serious enough to notice. Imagine this for a moment. Somewhere in America, right now, a small copper coin is sitting quietly in a drawer, a jar, maybe even your pocket. It looks ordinary, feels ordinary, and yet, it carries a story that has shocked seasoned collectors and changed lives almost overnight. What if I told you that a single 2001 Lincoln penny with no mint mark has commanded attention at levels reaching $944,000? Not because it's old, not because it's flashy, but because it slipped through the system when no one was looking. Stay with me because by the end of this video, you may never look at loose change the same way again. This story begins in the early 2000s, a time when pennies were being struck by the billions. The year 2001 was supposed to be routine, forgettable, unremarkable. And that's exactly why what happened next matters so much. In massive U.S. mint facilities, precision is everything. Every detail is controlled. Every mark is intentional. Or at least it's supposed to be. But once in a while, very rarely, something extraordinary escapes the process. A coin emerges with a silent mistake, a subtle error that most people would overlook, and that single oversight becomes the reason collectors later pay life-changing money. The 2001 no-mint Mark Lincoln penny is one of those moments. Now let me ask you something, and be honest with yourself. When was the last time you actually looked at a penny before spending it? Most people don't. They toss it aside, dismiss it, or let it roll under the car seat like it has no value at all. That's the fear most people live with without realizing it. The fear of unknowingly letting wealth slip through their fingers. Because while the world is busy chasing the next big thing, serious collectors are quietly hunting for specific errors, specific years, and specific conditions that are already in high demand. What makes this particular 2001 penny so powerful is not just the missing mint mark itself, but the timing, the condition, and the error characteristics that elevate it from common change to elite collectible status. In the numismatic world, demand doesn't come from hype. It comes from scarcity, verification, and competition. When collectors know only a limited number exist, and when those examples are tied to documented error patterns, the price doesn't creep upward. It jumps fast. And when one surfaces in exceptional condition, the market reacts immediately. Here's where excitement takes over. Imagine discovering that the coin you've ignored for years suddenly places you in a completely different financial conversation. This isn't about luck. It's about awareness. High-value pennies like this don't announce themselves with flashing lights. They wait for someone informed enough to recognize them. That's why collectors, investors, and dealers move with urgency when these coins appear. They know opportunities like this don't linger. Once they're identified, authenticated, and absorbed into private collections, they're gone, sometimes for decades. And let's pause for a second with a quick reality check. If pennies were truly worthless, why would elite collectors compete so aggressively for them? Why would auction houses spotlight error cents alongside gold and rare silver? The answer is simple. Coins like the 2001 no-mint mark Lincoln penny represent something bigger than copper. They represent leverage. They represent quiet assets hiding in plain sight. And yes, they represent the possibility of turning something small into something extraordinary. As the story moves forward, urgency becomes the deciding factor. The market doesn't wait for hesitation. Every year, more people become educated, more collections are searched, and fewer untouched coins remain. The window narrows. Demand increases. Prices respond. This is why those who act decisively, those who check, verify, and position themselves early, are the ones who benefit the most. It's almost ironic. The smallest denomination in U.S. currency has become one of the most psychologically powerful, precisely because people underestimate it. There's a certain humor in that, isn't there? A penny. 1 cent. The coin people leave behind in take-a-penny trays. And yet here it is, commanding attention that rivals luxury assets. History has a funny way of rewarding those who pay attention to details others ignore. Abraham Lincoln's portrait has appeared on billions of coins, but only a microscopic fraction carry the kind of error and demand that turns them into headline makers. By the time we reach the final act of this story, everything connects. Awareness leads to action. Action leads to opportunity. And opportunity favors those who refuse to assume they already know what they're holding. The 2001 no-mint mark Lincoln penny stands as proof that wealth doesn't always announce itself loudly. Sometimes it whispers. Sometimes it hides in plain sight. And sometimes it waits for the right person to recognize its true worth. So here's the question that matters most, and it's one only you can answer. Are the coins you already own just spare change? Or are they sleeping assets waiting to be discovered? Because while others are scrolling past this moment, collectors are searching, authenticating, and securing pieces that will never return to circulation. The next extraordinary find doesn't belong to the loudest voice in the room. It belongs to the one who looked closer when everyone else looked away. Imagine this for a moment. You reach into your pocket, pull out a simple brown penny, and without realizing it, you're holding something that could be worth more than a luxury home, more than a lifetime of savings, more than most people earn in decades. Sounds impossible, right? That reaction, that disbelief, is exactly why fortunes are quietly passing through everyday hands. Because the greatest opportunities in America rarely announce themselves. And today, we're talking about one of the most underestimated modern coins ever struck. The 2003 Lincoln 1-cent penny with no mint mark. A coin that, in extraordinary error condition, has captured attention at values discussed as high as $714,000. Yes, from 1 cent to generational wealth. And if that made you sit up just a little straighter, good, because this is where the story begins. Act 1 is all about awakening. In 2003, the US Mint was producing billions of Lincoln cents. Inflation was rising, people were distracted, and pennies were dismissed as pocket clutter. But history has a habit of hiding miracles in plain sight. Certain 2003 no-mint mark pennies, struck in Philadelphia, left the mint with rare and dramatic errors, mistakes so significant that collectors today compete fiercely for the few verified survivors. We're talking about off-metal strikes, double dies so bold they almost jump off the coin, and transitional errors that simply were never meant to exist. Here's the ironic twist. The more perfect the mint tried to be, the more valuable the mistake became. It's almost funny, isn't it? The one time the system slips, the reward goes to the person paying attention. Now let me ask you a question that resets everything. How many pennies have passed through your hands since 2003? Thousands? Tens of thousands? And how many did you actually look at? Exactly. Most people don't miss wealth because it doesn't exist. They miss it because they never stop to look. That's the fear most collectors don't talk about. The fear that the life-changing coin already came and went unnoticed. And yet, that fear is paired with excitement, because the window is not closed. These coins are still being discovered. They're still being authenticated. And demand has only intensified as serious money floods the rare coin market. Act 2 is where belief turns into urgency. When a 2003 no-mint mark penny appears with a major mint error and elite condition, the market reacts fast. High-end collectors, registry competitors, and investment-focused buyers don't hesitate. They understand scarcity, and they understand timing. These aren't casual hobbyists. They're people who treat rare coins the way others treat real estate or blue-chip stocks. And here's the key connection most people miss. Modern era coins are exploding in demand precisely because they shouldn't exist. Older coins are expected to be rare. But modern coins with catastrophic mint mistakes? That's lightning in a bottle. That's why prices have surged. And that's why exceptional examples are discussed in numbers that sound unreal to the average person. Let's pause for a quick reality check, with a smile. Somewhere right now, someone is using a rare penny as a grocery store tray coin. Somewhere else, a collector just bought one for the price of a sports car. Same coin, different awareness. That contrast is not accidental. It's the dividing line between people who spend money and people who recognize value. And if you're watching this, it's because you already feel that pull, that sense that maybe, just maybe, the coins you've saved weren't saved by accident. As we move deeper, excitement builds because this isn't just about one coin. The 2003 no-mint mark Lincoln cent has become a symbol of a larger truth. We are living in a golden age of rediscovery. Coins pulled from rolls, jars, and old drawers are being professionally graded and revealed as six-figure assets. And once a coin like this is certified, its story changes forever. It moves from pocket change to permanent record, from overlooked to elite. And the market notices. Demand doesn't whisper, it rushes. Act 3 is where everything connects, and the message becomes crystal clear. Wealth is rarely loud at first. Starts quietly with curiosity, with a closer look, with the decision to treat what others ignore as something worth examining. The 2003 no-mint mark penny represents opportunity wrapped in familiarity. It reminds us that abundance doesn't always arrive dressed in gold. It sometimes arrives copper-plated and hiding in plain sight. And right now, as more Americans search for alternative ways to build security, rare coins are no longer just collectibles. They are assets. They are legacy pieces. They are stores of value with stories that only grow stronger over time. There's urgency here, and it's real. As awareness increases, as more coins are found and locked into collections, the window narrows. Not because the opportunity disappears, but because the easiest discoveries are always first to go. The people who act early don't rush, they move decisively. They educate themselves. They examine their coins. They consult experts. And when the right piece appears, they don't hesitate. Because hesitation is expensive in markets driven by scarcity. So here's the final thought I want to leave with you. The difference between a penny and a fortune is not luck. It's attention. The 2003 Lincoln cent with no mint mark is proof that modern history still has secrets waiting to be uncovered. And whether you're holding one now or discovering this world for the first time, remember this: the greatest wealth stories are written by those who looked twice when everyone else looked away. Stay curious, stay alert, and never underestimate the power of what you already own. Because the next life-changing coin might not be found, it might already be yours.